Morning all, we continue a revision of the book of Kings through the book of Chronicles. We are on 1 Chronicles chapters 18 to 20. This narrates that David defeats his enemies. Reading from chapter 18 verse 1. Just a few verses for your recollection. Now after this it came to pass that David smote the Philistines and subdued them and took Gath and her towns out of the hand of the Philistines. And he smote Moab and the Moabites, and the Moabites became David's servants and brought gifts. And David smote Hadarezer, king of Zobah, unto Hamath, as he went to establish his dominion by the river Euphrates. And David took from him 1,000 chariots and 7,000 horsemen and 20,000 footmen. David also houghed all the chariot horses, but reserved of them 100 chariots. And when the Syrians of Damascus came to help Hadarezer, king of Zobah, David slew of the Syrians 22,000 men. Then David put garrisons in Syria, Damascus, and the Syrians became David's servants and brought gifts. Thus Yahweh preserved David whithersoever he went. And David took the sheaves of gold that were on the servants of Hadarezer and brought them to Jerusalem. Likewise from Tibhath and from Chun, cities of Hadarezer, brought David every much brass, wherewith Solomon made the brazen sea, and the pillars and the vessels of brass, etc. Verse 18. So David reigned over all Israel and executed judgment and justice among his people. There is an argument put forward today about slavery of Africans in the 16th century or so by the Western world, USA and England in particular. The group claim that they are the real original Hebrew/Israelites and were taken into slavery. Reading what David did and other original real Hebrew Israelites did, can they claim clean hands and a podium from which to preach, i.e. they were put in slaves as Hebrews, as we see David also doing the same? If right, should their argument be against the West, God, or themselves for breaking the terms of the covenant? Because we saw in the book of Kings and also in the Chronicles that God brought this about as he prophesied in Deuteronomy and so on, if they went against his covenant, i.e. breaking his laws and commandments. The argument of who is real and race may be a division of the devil, and those who buy into it may be servants of him promoting this division. Note who historically have been the enemy of the real Hebrews, the Syrians, etc., not the West. Is this a ploy of the devil to have would-be believers of the same or similar teachings fight amongst themselves, i.e. those who believe in the Bible, Jews, Christians, whether black or white, and thus divert attention and action away from the real enemy who follows a different faith and plan to wipe out or convert others, in other words, the religions of Syria and the Muslims and so on? See also the extracts below. Okay, moving on to chapter 19. The Ammonites disgraced David's men. If you have read all the former daily studies, you may remember this event, so I've left it out, but you should read or listen to it as refresher. This is where David sent some envoys to the son of a king that died, and the king was advised by his advice. They came to spy out the land, etc. So he cut off their clothing and their buttocks and shaved their beards, half the beard and so on. So I'm going to read from verse 19, chapter 19, verse 17, I'm just going to go refresh your mind from 1 Chronicles chapters 19, verse 17. And it was told David, and he gathered all Israel and passed over Jordan and came unto them and set the battle in array against them. So when David had put the battle in array against the Syrians, he fought with him. But the Syrians fled before Israel, and David slew of the Syrians 7,000 men which fought in chariots, and 40,000 footmen, and killed Sophath, the captain of the host. And when the servants of Hadarezer saw that they were put to the worst before Israel. They made peace with David and became his servants. Going on to a couple of verses, introduction of chapter 20, verse 2, the capture of Rabbah. Again, 1 Chronicles chapters 20, verse 2. And David took the crown of their king from off his head and found it to weigh a talent of gold. And there were precious stones in it, and it was set upon David's head. And he brought also exceeding much spoil out of the city. And he brought out of the people that were in it, and cut them with swords, with harrows of iron, and with axes. Even so dealt David with all the cities of the children of Ammon. And David and all the people returned to Jerusalem. So we see that the original Hebrews, i.e. through David, also inflicted punishment on other nations. Shalom, till tomorrow, God willing.